In the quiet suburban sprawl of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses stretched as far as the eye could see, life was predictable until it wasn't. My name's Jake, and I've been living in this HOA-controlled neighborhood for about a year, a place where the rules were stricter than a drill sergeant's morning roll call. No fence could be an inch too tall, no car could park on the street past 10 p.m., and heaven forbid your grass grew a fraction beyond regulation height. The enforcer of the suburban dystopia? Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, whose eagle eyes missed nothing and whose wrath was legendary. Karen wasn't just any HOA president. She was the kind of person who'd measure your mailbox with a ruler and leave a strongly worded letter if it was off by a centimeter. She drove a golf cart around the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, her blonde bob bouncing as she jotted down infractions with the glee of a kid on Christmas morning. Everyone knew her, and everyone avoided her. But I never thought she'd cross a line as bold as the one she did that summer. It started with the packages. I run a small online business selling custom vinyl decals, so my porch was a revolving door of deliveries. Boxes of supplies, rolls of vinyl, and sometimes even customer returns. I'd noticed a few packages going missing over the past month. At first, I chalked it up to porch pirates, those opportunistic thieves who snatch deliveries before you can blink. I installed a Ring doorbell camera, figuring it would deter anyone with sticky fingers. But the disappearances didn't stop. A box of premium matte vinyl vanished one Tuesday. A shipment of cutting blades was gone by Thursday. Each time, the camera caught nothing but a blur of motion, as if the thief knew exactly when to strike. Frustrated, I started asking neighbors if they'd seen anything. Most shook their heads, eager to avoid trouble. But Mrs. Delaney, the sweet old lady across the street who spent her days knitting and watching the neighborhood like it was her personal soap opera, gave me a cryptic tip. "Check with Karen," she said, her voice low. "She's been poking around porches lately, claiming she's inspecting for clutter." I laughed it off. Karen was a control freak, sure, but stealing? That seemed extreme, even for her. Still, the seed of suspicion was planted. I decided to up my game. I ordered a decoy package, a cheap box of random craft supplies, and had it shipped with a tracking number. I also tipped off a friend who worked at the local post office, who mentioned that a postal inspector had been sniffing around the area due to a spike in mail theft complaints. "They don't mess around," he warned. "If someone's stealing, they'll get caught." The decoy package arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon. I watched the delivery truck pull up via my Ring app, the driver plopping the box on my porch before driving off. I was at work, but I'd set the camera to send me real-time alerts. I waited, refreshing the app every few minutes, expecting nothing but hoping for something. Around 3 p.m., my phone pinged. Motion detected. I opened the feed, and there she was, Karen, in her signature pastel polo and khaki capris, striding onto my porch like she owned it. She glanced around, her clipboard nowhere in sight, and snatched the package with the ease of someone who'd done this before. My jaw dropped. Karen Mitchell, HOA tyrant, was a porch pirate. I was ready to march home and confront her, but something told me to hold off. If I was going to take down Karen, I needed more than a grainy video. I needed her caught red-handed. I called my post office buddy and told him what I'd seen. He promised to pass it along to the Postal Inspector, a guy named Agent Torres, who was apparently already building a case in the area. "Keep an eye out," he said. "Torres is like a bloodhound. If she's stealing, he'll know." Over the next week, I turned my porch into a trap. I ordered more decoy packages, each with a GPS tracker tucked inside, courtesy of a tech-savvy friend who owed me a favor. I also upgraded my camera system, adding a second one with a wider angle to catch every move. Karen didn't disappoint. She hit my porch twice more, each time with the same routine. A quick glance around, a snatch, and a brisk walk back to her golf cart. The trackers showed the packages moving to her house, just 3 streets over. I had her on video, and I had data. But Agent Torres wanted more. "We need her in the act," he told me over the phone, his voice calm but intense. "Set up one more delivery. I'll be watching." The plan was simple but nerve-wracking. I ordered a final decoy, a box labeled as containing high-value electronics, to make it irresistible. I scheduled the delivery for a Saturday morning when I knew Karen would be patrolling. Agent Torres parked an unmarked van down the street, blending in with the neighborhood's usual traffic. I stayed home, pretending to mow my lawn while keeping an eye on my phone. The delivery truck came at 10:15 a.m., dropping the box right on cue. My heart raced as I waited, my mower idling to keep up the charade. At 10:42, Karen's golf cart hummed into view. She slowed as she passed my house, her eyes locked on the porch. I ducked behind the mower, pretending to fiddle with the blade, while my camera app streamed live. Karen stepped out, her movements as bold as ever. She grabbed the box, tucked it under her arm, and started back toward her cart. That's when Torres made his move. "Karen Mitchell?" His voice cut through the morning air like a knife. Karen froze, the box slipping slightly in her grip. Torres stepped out of the van, badge in hand, his expression unreadable. "United States Postal Inspection Service. I'd like to have a word about that package." Karen's face went white, then red, then white again. This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, clutching the box like a lifeline. "I was just checking it for Jake. It looks suspicious." Torres didn't blink. "Ma'am, we got you on camera taking multiple packages over the past 2 weeks, and we've tracked them to your residence. Care to explain?" I couldn't help it. I stepped out from behind the mower, phone in hand, recording the whole thing. Karen's eyes darted to me, and for the first time, I saw fear in them. The woman who'd terrorized the neighborhood with her fines and rules was unraveling, but this was far from over. Torres motioned for her to hand over the box, and as she did, I noticed a crowd gathering. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, were peeking out from behind curtains and stepping onto their lawns. Mrs. Delaney was there, knitting needles still in hand, a smug smile on her face. Torres opened the box, revealing the GPS tracker and a note I'd included. "Caught you, Karen." Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to protest, but Torres cut her off. "We're going to need you to come with us," he said, gesturing to another inspector who'd appeared from the van, "and we'll be searching your property." As they led Karen to the van, her golf cart abandoned on the street, I felt a mix of triumph and disbelief. The HOA queen was dethroned, but I knew this was just the beginning. What else was she hiding? How many other neighbors had been her victims? And what would the HOA board do when they found out their president was a thief? I glanced at my phone, the video still recording, and realized this story was about to blow up the neighborhood group chat. But for now, I just watched as the van pulled away. Karen's silhouette in the back, her reign of terror paused, but not yet ended. The sun was dipping low over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the cul-de-sacs as the Postal Inspector's van disappeared with Karen Mitchell in tow. My phone was still buzzing with notifications from the neighborhood group chat, which had erupted into chaos the moment Mrs. Delaney posted a grainy photo of the scene, captioned simply, "Karen's in trouble." I stood on my lawn, mower long forgotten, replaying the moment Agent Torres flashed his badge. The HOA president, the woman who'd fined me $50 for a non-compliant garden gnome, was a package thief. But as the adrenaline faded, a nagging question grew. Why? Karen lived in one of the biggest houses in the neighborhood. She didn't need to steal my vinyl rolls or anyone else's deliveries. Something wasn't adding up. I headed inside, uploading the ring footage to my computer for safekeeping. The group chat was a wildfire of speculation. Some neighbors were shocked. Others claimed they'd always suspected Karen was up to no good. One message from Tom, the guy who ran the community barbecue, caught my eye. "Check her garage. Bet she's got a stash." I frowned. A stash? Of what? Stolen craft supplies didn't exactly scream black market empire. But Tom's comment stuck with me. Karen's golf cart was still parked crookedly on the street, and with the inspectors likely heading to her house, I figured it was time to do some sleuthing of my own. Carefully, of course. I grabbed my jacket and walked the 3 streets to Karen's house, keeping my distance. Her place was a McMansion, complete with a 3-car garage and a perfectly trimmed hedge that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to. A small crowd had already gathered, whispering and pointing as Agent Torres and his partner knocked on Karen's front door. Her husband, A quiet guy named Greg, whom nobody ever saw without Karen barking orders at him, opened the door looking like he'd just been told the world was ending. Torres flashed his badge again, and Greg stepped aside, his face pale. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. The inspectors disappeared inside, and the crowd grew. Mrs. Delaney shuffled up next to me, her knitting bag slung over her shoulder. "Told you she was trouble," she muttered, her needles clicking rhythmically. "She's been poking around everyone's porches for weeks. Said it was HOA business, but I saw her take a box from the Wilsons last month. Thought she was just being nosy. Guess not. Any idea why she'd do it?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Mrs. Delaney shrugged. "Power, maybe? Or boredom. Folks like Karen don't need a reason. They just want control." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "But I heard her talking to Greg about reselling something last week. Didn't think much of it till now." Reselling? My mind raced. Was Karen running some kind of side hustle with stolen goods? I pulled out my phone and checked the GPS trackers from the decoy packages. 2 of them were still pinging from inside her house, likely in the garage. I forwarded the data to Agent Torres, adding a note about what Mrs. Delaney had said. If Karen was reselling stolen packages, this was bigger than a few missing boxes of vinyl. Before I could dig deeper, my phone pinged with a new alert from the Ring app. Motion detected. Back at my house. I opened the feed, expecting a stray cat or a delivery truck, but instead I saw Greg, Karen's husband, creeping onto my porch. He was holding a crowbar, glancing nervously over his shoulder. My stomach dropped. Was he trying to cover Karen's tracks? Or worse, was he in on it? I zoomed in on the footage. He wasn't touching the new decoy package I'd left out as bait. He was prying the lock on my side gate, heading toward my backyard. I excused myself from Mrs. Delaney and jogged back home, my heart pounding. By the time I got there, Greg was gone, but the gate was ajar and muddy footprints led to my shed. I checked inside, and sure enough, another tracker, one I'd hidden in a package Karen took 2 days ago, was now inside my shed, tucked behind a bag of potting soil. Greg must have planted it, trying to shift the blame. This wasn't just Karen anymore. This was a team effort. I called Agent Torres immediately, sending him the new footage and the tracker's location. He replied within minutes. "Stay put. We're coming to you." I locked the shed and waited, my mind spinning. If Greg was involved, how deep did this go? Were other HOA board members in on it? And what were they doing with the stolen goods? I glanced at the group chat again. Someone had posted that the inspectors were carrying boxes out of Karen's garage. Another neighbor, Sarah from down the street, chimed in, "I saw her selling stuff at a flea market last month. Thought it was just old junk, but now I'm not so sure." As dusk settled over Willow Creek, Torres' van pulled up to my house. He stepped out, holding one of my decoy boxes, the GPS tracker still blinking inside. "We found a dozen packages in her garage," he said, his voice steady but grim. "Some from you, some from other neighbors. She's claiming it was a mix-up, but we've got enough to hold her. And now this." He gestured to the tracker from my shed. "Looks like her husband's trying to cover for her. Or maybe they're both deeper in this than we thought." I showed him the footage of Greg, and Torres' eyes narrowed. "We'll bring him in for questioning. But Jake, I need you to keep this quiet for now. If there's a bigger operation here, we don't want to tip anyone off." He handed me his card. "If you see anything else, call me, day or night." As he drove off, I stood on my porch, the weight of the day sinking in. Karen was in custody. Greg was under suspicion, and my quiet little neighborhood was unraveling like a cheap sweater. I glanced at the group chat, now flooded with theories about Karen's secret empire. Some neighbors were planning an emergency HOA meeting to oust her. Others were demanding a full audit of the HOA's finances. And me? I was just trying to process the fact that my decals business had accidentally blown open a suburban crime ring. But something told me this was far from over. As I locked my front door and checked the ring footage one last time, I noticed a new notification. Another motion alert, this time from the camera by my back gate. The timestamp was 5 minutes ago. I opened the feed and my blood ran cold. A figure in a hoodie, face obscured, was slipping to the gate, heading toward my shed again. They weren't carrying a crowbar this time. They were holding a phone, its screen glowing as they typed something. I zoomed in, but the footage was too dark to make out details. Whoever it was, they weren't Greg, and they weren't Karen. The night air in Willow Creek was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and impending drama. My heart thudded as I stared at the Ring app on my phone, the grainy footage showing a hooded figure slipping through my back gate. It was 9:35 p.m., and the neighborhood was supposed to be asleep, but here was someone, definitely not Karen or Greg, sneaking toward my shed. My first instinct was to run outside and confront them, but Agent Torres' warning echoed in my head. Keep it quiet. Don't tip anyone off. I grabbed a flashlight, double-checked that my doors were locked, and called Torres, leaving a voicemail with the details. Then I positioned myself by the living room window, peering through the blinds, phone in hand, ready to record. The figure moved fast, their hoodie obscuring their face as they fiddled with the shed's lock. Whoever they were, they knew what they were looking for. The tracker I had found earlier, the one Greg had planted, was still inside, and I had a sinking feeling they were after it. Maybe they wanted to erase evidence. Or maybe there was something else in that shed I hadn't noticed. I cursed myself for not checking it more thoroughly earlier. The figure pulled out a small tool, maybe a lockpick, and popped the shed door open in seconds. They disappeared inside, their phones glow casting eerie shadows on the walls. I zoomed in on the footage, trying to catch any distinguishing features, but the hoodie was baggy and the darkness didn't help. Then, my phone buzzed with a new group chat message. It was Sarah, the neighbor who'd mentioned Karen selling stuff at a flea market. Jake, you awake? Saw someone creeping around your backyard just now. Didn't get a good look, but they were heading toward your shed. My pulse spiked. Sarah's house was 2 doors down. How had she seen this? I texted back, asking if she was still watching, but before she could reply, the figure emerged from the shed, empty-handed, and sprinted toward the gate. I couldn't wait for Torres. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet, not to use, just to feel less helpless, and crept out my back door, staying low. The figure was already gone, the gate swinging slightly in the breeze. I checked the shed, my flashlight sweeping the cluttered space. The tracker was still there, untouched, but a box of old vinyl rolls I'd stored in the corner was open, its contents scattered. Nothing seemed missing, but the intrusion felt personal, like a message. I snapped photos and sent them to Torres, then headed back inside, locking everything tight. By morning, Willow Creek was a pressure cooker. The group chat was a mess of rumors. Karen was out on bail, Greg was nowhere to be found, and someone claimed to have seen a strange car parked near the community entrance all night. I met Mrs. Delaney for coffee at her place, hoping her neighborhood gossip network had picked up something useful. She was already knitting a new scarf, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the scandal. Heard from Tom that Karen's been selling more than just packages, she said, sipping her tea. He saw her at that flea market with electronics, clothes, even jewelry, stuff that didn't look like it came from her house. Electronics? I asked, thinking of the high-value electronics label on my decoy box. Any chance she's got a crew working with her? Mrs. Delaney leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Maybe. Greg's too spineless to be the mastermind, but there's that nephew of hers, Dylan. Kids always hanging around, driving that beat-up van. I saw him at her house yesterday, right before the inspectors showed up. Dylan. I vaguely remembered him. A lanky 20-something with a man bun and a habit of blasting music from his van. Could he be the hooded figure? I thanked Mrs. Delaney and headed home, pulling up the Ring footage again. The figure's build was slim and the way they moved, quick, almost jittery, matched Dylan's vibe. I sent the footage to Torres with a note about Dylan, then decided to take a walk past Karen's house. If Dylan was involved, maybe he'd show up. As I approached, I saw the golf cart still parked crookedly on the street, a sad relic of Karen's reign. Her house looked quiet, but the garage door was slightly ajar, and I could hear voices inside. I ducked behind a neighbor's hedge, feeling like a low-budget detective, and listened. It was Karen, her voice sharp but shaky. Dylan, you need to get rid of it now. If they find it, we're done. A lower voice, Dylan's, I assumed, muttered something I couldn't catch. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of boxes being shifted. I texted Torres again, my fingers flying. At Karen's. She's with Dylan in the garage. Sounds like they're moving stuff. I stayed low, watching as Dylan emerged, carrying a cardboard box to his van. He looked nervous, scanning the street before tossing the box in the back. Karen followed, her usual confidence replaced by a frantic edge. She was still in her pastel polo, but it was wrinkled like she'd slept in it. I snapped a photo, careful not to be seen, and sent it to Torres. Before I could retreat, Dylan's head snapped in my direction. I froze, hoping the hedge was enough cover. He squinted, then climbed into his van and peeled out, tires screeching. Karen stormed back into the garage, slamming the door behind her. My phone buzzed. Torres, finally. Stay back, Jake. We're on our way. Dylan's van is on our radar now. I backed off, heading home with my heart in my throat. The neighborhood felt different now, like the tidy lawns and matching mailboxes were hiding secrets nobody wanted to admit. Back at my place, I checked the Ring app again. Another motion alert, this time from the front porch. I opened the feed, expecting Dylan or another mystery figure. But it was just a new delivery, a small box from my vinyl supplier. I laughed, a mix of relief and exhaustion, and went to grab it. But as I picked it up, I noticed something odd, a handwritten note tucked under the tape, in handwriting I didn't recognize. It read, "Stop snooping or you'll regret it." I stared at the note, my blood running cold. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. Someone, Dylan, Greg, or someone else entirely, was watching me, and they weren't happy. The note's words burned into my brain. Stop snooping or you'll regret it. I stood on my porch, the small delivery box in one hand, the threatening note in the other, as the quiet hum of Willow Creek's evening settled around me. The streetlights flickered on, casting an orange glow, but the neighborhood felt anything but safe now. My name's Jake, and what started as a simple case of missing packages had spiraled into something far bigger, a suburban conspiracy with Karen, the HOA tyrant, at its center, and now her nephew Dylan, and maybe even her husband Greg as players in the game. But who left the note, and what were they hiding? I snapped a photo of the note and sent it to Agent Torres, the Postal Inspector who'd already caught Karen red-handed. Then I stashed the note in a Ziploc bag, like I'd seen in crime shows, and tucked it into my desk drawer. My Ring camera hadn't caught anyone dropping off the note. The delivery driver had left the box, and the footage showed nothing unusual after that. Whoever left it was smart, avoiding the camera's view. I double-checked my locks and set an extra alert on my phone, feeling like I was living in a thriller movie. The next morning, the neighborhood group chat was a war zone. News of Karen's arrest had spread like wildfire, and the emergency HOA meeting was set for that evening. Someone leaked that the inspectors had found more than just stolen packages in Karen's garage. Unopened boxes of electronics, designer clothes, and even a few pieces of jewelry, all neatly organized like a mini warehouse. Sarah, the neighbor who'd seen Dylan creeping around, posted a blurry photo of his van at the flea market, loaded with boxes. "This is bigger than we thought," she wrote. Karen's been running a whole operation. I decided to attend the HOA meeting, not just to see Karen's downfall, but to gauge who else might be involved. The community center was packed, with neighbors squeezed into folding chairs, whispering and throwing side eyes. Karen wasn't there. She was still dealing with the fallout of her arrest, but Greg was, sitting in the back, looking like a man who'd aged a decade overnight. Dylan was nowhere to be seen, which made my skin prickle. I kept my phone in my lap, ready to text Torres if anything felt off. The meeting was chaos. Tom, the barbecue guy, stood up and demanded Karen's immediate removal as HOA president. "She's been stealing from us, and who knows what else," he shouted, waving a printout of the group chat. Others chimed in, sharing stories of missing packages or suspicious finds Karen had slapped on them. Mrs. Delaney, knitting furious in the front row, dropped a bombshell. "I saw Dylan loading boxes into his van again this morning. He was at Karen's house, and Greg was with him." The room erupted, and Greg shrank further into his chair, avoiding eye contact. I texted Torres, "Dylan's moving stuff again. Greg's here. acting weird. His reply was instant. We're tracking the van. Stay at the meeting. Keep us posted. I glanced at Greg, who was now fidgeting with his phone, his face pale. Was he texting Dylan? Warning him? I leaned toward Mrs. Delaney and whispered, "Keep an eye on Greg. I'm going to check something." I slipped out of the community center and headed toward Karen's house, staying in the shadows. The street was quiet, but Dylan's van was parked in her driveway. The back doors open. I crouched behind a neighbor's car, watching as Dylan emerged from the garage, carrying another box. He looked jittery, glancing around like he expected trouble. I snapped a photo and sent it to Torres, my heart racing. Then I noticed something odd, a second figure, not Karen or Greg, stepping out of the van. They were tall, wearing a dark jacket, and their face was hidden by a baseball cap. They handed Dylan a small bag, and he stuffed it into his pocket before climbing into the driver's seat. Before I could process it, headlights swept the street. Torres' unmarked van pulled up, silent but swift, and 2 inspectors stepped out, badges gleaming under the streetlights. "Dylan Mitchell," Torres called, his voice firm but calm. "Step out of the vehicle. Hands where we can see them." Dylan froze, his hands on the steering wheel, and the second figure bolted, sprinting across Karen's lawn and disappearing into the shadows. Torres didn't chase them. He focused on Dylan, who slowly got out, hands raised, his usual cocky grin replaced by panic. I stayed hidden, recording everything on my phone. Torres opened the van's back doors, revealing stacks of boxes, some with familiar shipping labels. "Care to explain this?" he asked, pulling out one of my decoy packages. Dylan stammered, "It's not what it looks like. I was just helping my aunt." Torres didn't buy it. He cuffed Dylan and read him his rights as the second inspector called for backup. I texted Mrs. Delaney. "They got Dylan. Tell everyone at the meeting." By the time I got back to the community center, the news had spread. Greg was gone, having slipped out during the chaos, and the group chat was flooded with updates. Someone posted that the inspectors had found a ledger in Karen's garage, detailing sales from flea markets and online marketplaces. She'd been reselling stolen goods for months, using Dylan to move the merchandise and Greg to keep the HOA distracted with petty fines. But the mystery figure in the cap, who were they and why had they run? As the meeting broke up, I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face. My phone buzzed with a new ring alert. Another motion detection, this time at my front porch. I opened the feed, expecting another note or worse, but it was just Mrs. Delaney, dropping off a plate of her famous cookies with a note. "Great work, Jake, but watch your back." I smiled, but the uneasy feeling lingered. The inspectors had Karen and Dylan, but the figure in the cap was still out there, and Greg was missing. I glanced at the group chat, where a new message from an anonymous account popped up. "This isn't over. Check the community shed." I froze. The community shed, tucked behind the clubhouse, was where the HOA stored lawn equipment and holiday decorations. Nobody ever went there except Karen and her board. I grabbed my flashlight and texted Torres, forwarding the message. As I headed toward the shed, the neighborhood felt alive with secrets, every shadow hiding a potential clue. Whatever was in that shed, I had a feeling it would blow this case wide open, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what I'd find.